Here is the NFL Iceberg. Spygate. This is a reference to a scandal in which the New England Patriots were secretly videotaping opposing coaches' signals during games from 2000 to 2007 under head coach Bill Belichick. The scandal caught attention during the 2007 season, when the Patriots were caught videotaping New York Jets defensive coaches' signals during a game on September 9, 2007. While videotaping opposing coaches is not illegal in the NFL per se, there are designated areas allowed by the league to do such taping. However, because the Patriots were instead videotaping the Jets coaches from their own sidelines during the game, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell deemed it to be a violation of league rules. Bill Belichick would be fined $500,000 for his role in the incident, and the Patriots organization was fined $250,000, as well as having their first-round draft pick revoked.
He even got caught cheating, and nobody cared. Bill Belichick proved that in America it's okay to cheat, as long as you cheat your way to the top.
This scandal opened the eyes to many fans as to what teams get up to behind closed doors and how much cheating actually takes place behind the scenes. This also isn't the only cheating scandal to come from the Patriots, as we will discover later on. Tanking. Tanking is a concept developed by fans in which they believe that a given team is losing games on purpose, typically to boost their draft stock for the next season. Fans believe this phenomenon happens when a team realizes that they have nothing really to play for, typically when they've already been eliminated from playoff contention or have lost many games already. So, they intentionally throw the remainder of their games in order to get a higher draft pick. The way the NFL draft works is that teams who finish worse that season will have a higher draft pick than the teams that perform better. So while it is possible that teams are actually doing this, no one has ever admitted to actually tanking and throwing games on purpose. Despite this, there's basically a team every year that gets accused of tanking, and it's not out of the realm of possibility that it does happen. Bountygate. Bountygate was an incident in which members of the New Orleans Saints were accused of paying out bonuses or bounties for injuring players on opposing teams. The pool was alleged to have been in operation from the 2009 season all the way up to the 2011-2012 playoffs. After the Saints had defeated the Minnesota Vikings in the 2009 NFC Championship Game, several Vikings players and coaches claimed that the Saints were deliberately trying to hurt Vikings quarterback Brett Favre. The Vikings were particularly angered when Saints defensive end Bobby McCray knocked Favre to the ground with a high-low hit. McCray hit Favre below the knees, briefly knocking Favre out of the game with an ankle injury. In the 2010 offseason, an anonymous player told NFL officials that the Saints had targeted Favre as well as Arizona Cardinals quarterback Kurt Warner from the previous week as part of a bounty program administered by Saints defensive coordinator Greg Williams. In 2012, ESPN reported that former New Orleans Saints defensive assistant Mike Curello contacted the NFL regarding a bounty program after the 2009 postseason. He testified that he kept track of payments and pledges made. The NFL announced that it had obtained irrefutable proof of a bounty pool dating back to the 2009 season, based on a review of 18,000 documents. Between 22 and 27 Saints defensive players were involved, and Greg Williams would be suspended indefinitely until a later appeal, as well as head coach Sean Payton, who would be suspended the entire 2012 season for allegedly covering up the scandal during the NFL's investigation. The Saints organization was also fined $500,000 and were forced to forfeit a second-round draft pick for the next 2 seasons. The Madden Curse. Madden is the NFL licensed football game developed by EA Sports. Every year features a new game and also features a new player from the league on the cover. What's strange about this is the amount of players featured on the cover that have sustained injuries during the subsequent season. Garrison Hurst was the first player to appear on the cover of the Madden video game. He was having an amazing career until shortly after being featured on the cover, he would break his ankle. The injury was so severe that he would go on to miss 2 full seasons, and even when he returned, he was never the same player again. There are plenty of other examples like this. Rob Gronkowski was only able to start 6 games due to a plethora of injuries he was facing the season that he was featured on the cover of Madden 17. In Madden 07, Sean Alexander was featured on the cover and shortly after would fracture his foot, missing 6 games and never truly recovering from the injury, leading to his exit from the league soon after. Even players who seemingly beat the curse are still forced to endure some sort of negative effect during the season. Patrick Mahomes may have won the Super Bowl after being featured on the cover of Madden 20, however he still suffered an injury in the middle of the season that caused him to miss 2 full games. It's worth noting that some bad juju is associated with the curse as well as outside of just injury. Brett Favre's many controversies and his off-the-field antics slowly started to develop shortly after he was featured on the 09 Madden cover. Tom Brady losing the Super Bowl to a backup quarterback is also attributed to him being featured on the cover of Madden 18. Antonio Brown? Actually, we don't need to talk about Antonio Brown. You get the point. There are plenty of other examples for every player featured on the Madden cover, and it's led to fans to speculate how the curse will manifest itself in its next victim.
Ow! It's his knee. Doc! You'll never play football again.
Too bad, kid.
28-3. This lives rent-free in the minds of Falcons fans everywhere. 28-3 is the largest deficit overcome in a Super Bowl. It happened in Super Bowl 51 between the New England Patriots and the Atlanta Falcons. During the game, the Falcons had built a 28-3 lead with only 2 minutes and 6 seconds left to go in the third quarter. What happened next is straight out of a movie. The Patriots would mount the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history, scoring 2 touchdowns and a field goal, cutting the lead to 1 score, making it 28-20 with 3 minutes left in the game. The Falcons could seemingly put the game away with one more score, and it looked like they were going to get that score in the form of at least a field goal until a sack and then a holding penalty knocked them out of field goal range, and they were forced to punt it back to the Patriots. The rest, as they say, is history. The Patriots drove down the field and tied the game up with a touchdown and a 2-point conversion to make it 28-28 and force overtime. The first, and to this day, only Super Bowl that has had to be decided in overtime. And sure enough, the Patriots would win the coin toss in overtime, receiving the ball first and driving all the way down the field to score a game-winning touchdown to end the game 34-28. It can't be understated how everything had to go right for the Patriots in 1 quarter of play. They had to score 3 touchdowns and a field goal, along with 2 2-point conversions, while also stopping the Falcons from scoring any more, just to tie the game. And then to win the overtime coin flip and drive all the way down the field to score a game-winning touchdown. This comeback was just so improbable, and it shocked NFL fans everywhere, including Falcons fans who now have had to live with the 28-3 joke ever since it happened. Seriously, you can't go too far talking about the Falcons without somebody bringing up the infamous 28-3 score. It's the closest the Falcons franchise has ever gotten to a Super Bowl victory, and unfortunately, coming up short and blowing leads has become synonymous with the Atlanta Falcons franchise.
Do you love me or not?
I don't.
The tuck rule. The tuck rule is an infamous rule in the NFL that negates a fumble. If you're unfamiliar with the rules of American football, a fumble is when an offensive player loses possession of the football before he is tackled. When that happens, the defense has the opportunity to take the ball and give possession over to their offense. As long as the offensive player isn't tackled and brought to the ground before the ball comes loose, it is a fumble. However, the rules become a little different when it comes to throwing the ball. If the player throwing the ball fumbles, then they'd have had to have lost control of the ball before their arm was moving forward. If their arm was going forward while losing possession of the ball, then it is treated as an incomplete pass instead of a fumble. I hope that makes sense to anyone watching who's not familiar with the rules. Basically, if the arm is going forward, it's not a fumble, just an incomplete pass, and the defense doesn't have the opportunity to take possession. This is where the tuck rule comes into play. In a game now referred to as the tuck rule game, this rule came into play in a very strange way. In a 2002 divisional round playoff game between the Oakland Raiders and the New England Patriots, the Raiders were leading 13-10 with 2 minutes left to go in the game. The Raiders defense hit Tom Brady, in which it seemed like Brady had fumbled the ball and the Raiders recovered, which would have allowed them to close out the game and win. However, when the fumble was reviewed, it was revealed that Brady lost possession of the ball as he was going to tuck the ball away to protect it. This is when fans first learned about the tuck rule, in which here is how it is stated in the official NFL rulebook. Any intentional forward movement of the arm starts a forward pass, even if the player loses possession of the ball as he is attempting to tuck it back towards his body. If the player has tucked the ball into his body and then loses possession, it is a fumble. So basically, when Tom Brady tried to tuck the ball away in order to protect it, it was treated as a pass that fell incomplete. So instead of the Raiders getting possession and winning the game, the Patriots maintained possession of the ball, and sure enough, they would go on to win the game. This moment is infamous in NFL history, as most fans never knew about this tuck rule, and many still believe that it should have been a fumble to this day. So, it is a rule, just a very strange one that ended up costing the Raiders, and many point to this as the moment of the Raiders' downfall as a franchise. They were once considered one of the greatest franchises in the league, but since this moment, they have not won a single playoff game, and in fact have only made the playoffs twice in the past 20 years. The tuck rule to Raiders fans is basically what 28-3 is to Falcons fans. Deflategate. What a surprise, another cheating scandal involving the Patriots. The 2015 AFC Championship game matched up the Indianapolis Colts and the New England Patriots. The game was played in a very heavy rainfall, and after the end of the first half, when the Patriots were leading 17-7, an NFL referee decided to examine one of the Patriots' game balls, and later proceeded to examine all 12 that the team had provided. He found that they were all below the minimum air pressure required by the league. The official rules of the National Football League require footballs to be inflated to a gauge pressure of between 12.5 and 13.5 pounds per square inch. There's a lot of conflicting reports, but the official NFL investigation reported that one game ball was 2 pounds below the required minimum, while the other 11 game balls were just a few ticks under. The idea being that Tom Brady had the Patriots organization intentionally reduce the air pressure in the game balls to allow for easier grip while handling the ball in difficult weather conditions. Brady, of course, denied the allegations, with most opposition arguing that the cold weather plays a factor in decreased air pressure, and overall it really doesn't make a difference. And while this is true and definitely could play a factor, the investigation still does show a discrepancy in the Colts game balls, in which, while there are drops in air pressure between both teams, the game balls used by the Patriots were consistently a few ticks under the Colts game balls. So the debates have continued as to whether or not the Patriots deflated their game balls on purpose in order to gain an unfair advantage, or if it was just a strange discrepancy that really didn't play a factor into the game. After the game balls were reinflated for the second half, the Patriots proceeded to outscore the Colts 28-0 and would win the game in a 45-7 blowout. So yeah, I honestly don't think it made much of a difference, nor did it really matter. The Patriots were just obviously the better team. This, however, did not stop the NFL from handing down a series of punishments for the incident. Tom Brady would be suspended 4 games, and the Patriots would be fined $1 million, as well as having their first and 4th round draft picks taken away. Super Bowl hangover. The Super Bowl hangover is a reference to teams who made it to the Super Bowl and significantly underperformed the following season. It's mostly a joke. However, the phenomenon was first brought up in the 2000s when a series of Super Bowl runner-up teams from 2001 to 2007 would all fail to even make the playoffs the next season. The 2001 Giants, the 2002 Rams, the 2003 Raiders, the 2004 Panthers, the 2005 Eagles, and the 2007 Bears would all miss the playoffs the season after they lost the Super Bowl. This led to the term Super Bowl hangover, and is now used as a reference of any team that makes it to the Super Bowl and performs poorly the next season. 18-1 Patriots. Wow, a lot of these entries have to do with the Patriots. The Miami Dolphins remain the only NFL team since the league merger to finish with a perfect season, finishing 17-0, winning all of their regular season games, playoff games, and of course, the Super Bowl.
It was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
The only team to get close to this feat was the 2007 Patriots. This was one of the best Patriots teams of all time, winning all of their regular season games, winning both of their playoff games, and heading to Super Bowl 42 with a record of 18-0. Despite their undefeated record, in the Super Bowl, they were met with a shocking upset in which they lost to the 13-6 New York Giants by a score of 17-14. This is considered one of the greatest upsets in NFL history. The Giants weren't even winners of their own division. They made the playoffs as a wild card team and had to beat 3 teams on the road to even qualify for the Super Bowl. It was incredible and considered to be one of the greatest Super Bowls of all time. And despite winning all their games and being one of the greatest teams in not just Patriots history, but in all of NFL history, the New England Patriots would still come short and lose the one game that mattered the most all season. DPI Inconsistency. This is a reference to the defensive pass interference penalty. The NFL rulebook states it is a pass interference by either team when any act by a player more than 1 yard beyond the line of scrimmage significantly hinders an eligible player's opportunity to catch the ball. On offense, this is typically when they push off of a defender in order to gain more separation, and on defense, it is typically when the defender makes contact with the player before the ball reaches them. The controversy comes from fans realizing how inconsistently this penalty is called. You'll see instances of obvious defensive pass interference that goes uncalled, one famous example that we will cover later on in the Iceberg, and there are instances of no pass interference and yet a penalty is called regardless. It is one of the most missed and simultaneously most poorly called penalties you'll see happen as you watch the NFL. Some people theorize that the NFL uses this penalty to rig outcomes for games that they'd like to see happen in order to strengthen narratives and boost ratings and whatnot, but I don't know about all that. This did briefly lead to a rule change for the 2019 season, in which teams were now able to challenge a pass interference on the play. However, this rule quickly led to longer breaks between in-game play and was quickly abused by many head coaches, so the rule was removed indefinitely. The Washington football team. I'm sure many of you already know about this one. One of the most historic franchises in the NFL was the Washington Redskins franchise. However, public pressure has always persisted with owner Dan Snyder to change the name of the franchise due to many viewing it as offensive. The public pressure would be so significant that it would be announced that the name would change for the 2020 season. Changed to the Washington football team. Yep, they just decided to not have a name, and despite it being a placeholder name, it's still just ridiculous to think about. The logo would be retired and the uniforms would be changed to a more generic look. A very generic W logo for Washington would be used as they took up this moniker, and they would play under this moniker for 2 whole seasons. Finally, for the 2022 season, the new official team name would be changed to the Washington Commanders. They would receive a new uniform design and a W logo that is significantly less generic, but still pretty generic.
Washington Redskins, go f yourself.
Bottlegate. Also referred to as the Bottle Game, Bottlegate refers to a game that was played on December 16, 2001 between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Cleveland Browns. With a minute and 8 seconds remaining in the game, the Jaguars were leading 15-10, with the Browns facing a 4th and 2 on the Jaguars' 12-yard line. Browns quarterback Tim Couch took the snap and threw a short 3-yard pass to Quincy Morgan for a first down. Although Morgan had appeared to have bobbled the football, officials had ruled it a completed pass. Couch hurried the offense to the line of scrimmage and spiked the ball with 48 seconds remaining, after which the officials announced that they would review the 4th down conversion play earlier. They later overturned the original call, ruling it an incomplete pass and a turnover on downs, in which the Jaguars would take over possession and win the game. This was controversial because it appeared that the Browns had spiked the ball, which counts as a play, and after a play has already occurred, you can't go back and review it to change the call. But this is not what makes the game famous. After hearing the refs overturn the previous play, the Browns fans that packed the stadium proceeded to throw all of their empty beer bottles onto the field in response to the call. This caused a huge mess of debris on the field.
And it's getting ugly here in Cleveland.
And despite there still being 48 seconds left, the officials called the game due to the field no longer being able to be played on.
And now they're going to call the game.
That is the end of the game.
Unbelievable. Now they call the game.
Despite this, and I can't believe this, the NFL contacted the officiating team and informed them that they did not have the authority to end a game early. They would be forced to finish the game, so officials had to go back and tell players that were in the locker rooms, many of whom were already undressing and showering, that they were required to go back out onto the field and finish the game. By the time all the players and officials returned to the field, over 20 minutes had gone by, and after 2 kneel downs by the Jaguars, the game officially ended 15-10 in the Jaguars' victory. Referee of the game, Terry McCauley, argues that the call to review the play came from the booth before the Browns had spiked the ball, despite it not appearing that way to the fans. The 2018 NFC Championship Game. Oh boy, here we go. So we just covered the inconsistencies of pass interference penalties being called. This is probably the most famous example of one. The 2018 NFC Championship Game pinned up the Los Angeles Rams and the New Orleans Saints for the right to advance to Super Bowl 53. Late in the 4th quarter, the game was tied up 20-20, with the Saints having the ball on the Rams' 13-yard line with a chance to seal the game away, with only a minute and 49 seconds left. On a crucial 3rd down and 10 play, Saints quarterback Drew Brees attempted to throw a pass to receiver Tommy Lee Lewis, which fell incomplete and caused a 4th down. This forced the Saints to simply settle for a field goal to go up 23-20, and it gave the Rams a chance to win the game. On the play, it had appeared pretty obvious that Rams defensive back nickel Robbie Coleman had knocked Lewis to the ground before he had ever had the chance to catch the ball, which would be considered a defensive pass interference penalty. Had it been properly called, it would have given the Saints a guaranteed 1st down, and from there, they would have been able to presumably kill all the remainder of the game clock and kick what would have been then a game-winning field goal. Instead, the pass interference went uncalled, and the Rams managed to get the ball back. The no call was super controversial due to how seemingly obvious and apparent it was, and had it been called, the Saints would have inevitably been able to seal the game there. Of course, it was made more controversial because it did grant the Rams a chance to win, in which they were able to tie the game up 23-23 and eventually win it in overtime in a 26-23 victory. This no call enraged head coach Sean Payton, and as I previously mentioned, it would lead to a rule change the next season, in which teams would be able to challenge pass interference penalties in order to appease the outraged fans. Even after it was all said and done, I do believe the Rams had done enough to win the game, especially since they outperformed the Saints in overtime. However, it cannot be denied that the Rams would not have been able to win without that second chance granted to them by the refs. Ref betting. There actually isn't much to this one as I originally thought, but it's just a conspiracy theory between some NFL fans that NFL refs take part in betting on games that they are officiating. I thought there would be some substantial examples, however I couldn't really find any concrete instances of this happening. The theory exists mainly to try and explain the many bad calls that happen pretty often, including the examples that we just mentioned. While the NFL does have rules that prohibit officials from taking part in any sort of gambling, this doesn't stop some fans from speculating that it happens and that it might explain some controversial calls throughout the league's history. But I'm pretty sure it's all speculative. Bills 4 Super Bowl losses. The Buffalo Bills were one of the best NFL franchises back in the early 90s. They are still to this day the only team in NFL history to make it to the Super Bowl 4 consecutive seasons in a row. Unfortunately, they are also the only team in NFL history to lose 4 consecutive Super Bowls in a row. Despite being crowned AFC champions on 4 consecutive seasons, they would lose every Super Bowl appearance from that time period, losing Super Bowl 25 to the New York Giants 20-19.
You blew it!
Losing Super Bowl 26 to the Washington Redskins 37-24.
You blew it!
And losing both Super Bowls 27 and 28 to the Dallas Cowboys 52-17 and 30-13 respectively.
You blew it! You blew it! You blew it!
Also, unfortunately, these are the only Super Bowl appearances that the Buffalo Bills have ever had, making these instances the closest they've ever gotten to being world champions, coming up short each time. It is an incredible feat, but one I'm sure that Bills fans weren't hoping to have to their name. The Super Bowl 47 Blackout. Super Bowl. The Super Bowl 47 Blackout happened on February 3rd, 2013 in a matchup between the Baltimore Ravens and the San Francisco 49ers. With 13 minutes and 22 seconds to go in the third quarter, the Ravens had built themselves a pretty strong lead of 28-6, when suddenly, the lights at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome went out, and it had been reported that they were suffering a power outage that was caused by equipment failure.
Half the power in New Orleans Stadium, the Superdome here, is out.
This would see a 34-minute delay in the game, as the stadium crew attempted to get the power back on. This has also led to the Super Bowl being given the nickname the Blackout Bowl. What's interesting is as soon as the power was brought back, the 49ers were able to mount a pretty serious comeback, cutting the deficit to 28-23 by the end of the third quarter. The Ravens would hold on to win the game 34-31, however the game was made significantly closer after the blackout had happened. This has led to some conspiracy theories from fans that the NFL intentionally made the power go out in order to give the 49ers offense a chance to regroup, an offense that had been dormant the entire first half of the game. People who subscribe to this theory argue that the NFL would want the game to be more competitive as opposed to a blowout in order to maximize ratings for the game. One subscriber to this theory is none other than Hall of Fame Ravens linebacker Ray Lewis himself. He stated in an interview, "You're a $1 zillion company and your lights go out? No way." What's funny about this is that 49ers CEO Jed York actually responded to the claim on Twitter, stating, "There is no conspiracy, I pulled the plug," which is hilarious. But yeah, I don't think there's any real conspiracy here, just a fun technical malfunction that was something to talk about for a little while. 73-0. 73-0 is the largest blowout in NFL history. It's not necessarily a unique score, as all throughout NFL history, there have been some 50-0 scores and even some 60-0 scores. What makes this score especially unique, aside from it being the largest blowout on record, is that it actually came from an NFL championship game. On December 20th, 1940, the Chicago Bears absolutely blew out the Washington Redskins 73-0 in the NFL championship game. To this day, no other team has been able to score more than 73 points in a game. What's funny is that Washington had actually beat Chicago 3 weeks earlier, ironically in a very low-scoring game of only 7-3. It's just interesting to think that a championship game that was supposed to pin the two best teams of their respective conferences led to the largest blowout in the league's history. Nameth Guarantee. This is in reference to one of the earliest Super Bowls, Super Bowl III. Funnily enough, This was the first ever Super Bowl to officially adopt the name Super Bowl. The game was played on January 12, 1969, between the AFL's champion, the New York Jets, and the NFL's champion, the Baltimore Colts. You see, back then, the NFL officially was a lot smaller than the league we know it today. They found themselves competing with other rival football leagues, most notably the AFL, or American Football League. The modern era of the NFL really didn't begin to form until the NFL officially merged with the AFL, absorbing all of their teams and creating the one league that we know today. So before then, the Super Bowl was thought originally to be in concept as a world championship game between the two separate league champions, which I know is funny that they call it the World Championship Game despite every team being American. But while the official merge was still a season away, many treated the NFL team as always being superior to the AFL team. Many thought the AFL teams really couldn't compete against them. Super Bowls 1 and 2 backed this up, with the NFL's champion Green Bay Packers blowing out the AFL's Kansas City Chiefs and Oakland Raiders 35-10 and 33-14 respectively. So everybody thought this game was going to be no different. The Colts were 19-point favorites in this game. However, that did not stop Jets quarterback Joe Namath from guaranteeing a Jets victory. He would state this in an interview a few days prior to the game, and lo and behold, the Jets would defeat the Colts 16-7, and the AFL would win its first ever Super Bowl victory, which became essential in ensuring the two leagues would officially merge, as the Jets proved the AFL teams could be on equal playing field with the NFL teams. This game is regarded as one of the greatest upsets in NFL history and is made even more famous from Nameth guaranteeing that it would happen a few days prior. Dez Bryant's no catch. There are a lot of controversies when it comes to calling a completed catch in the NFL. There are plenty of examples, but I focused them onto this one specifically. On January 11th, 2015, an NFC divisional round of the playoffs was played by the Dallas Cowboys and the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay was up 26-21, but the Cowboys were driving with around 3 minutes left to go in the game. The Packers held them to a 4th down, and it was time to make a play. Cowboys quarterback Tony Romo threw a deep ball, and it was seemingly caught by wide receiver Dez Bryant, who then reached over the goal line to try and score a touchdown. He hit the ground, and the ball came out at the end. For a moment, it looked like he had scored a touchdown, but the official ruled that he caught it and was down at the 1-yard line, setting up a 1st and goal for Dallas and a perfect opportunity to win the game. However, the officials would review the play and later determine that despite appearing to have caught the ball, Dez Bryant never had full control of the ball, and therefore, when he lost it after going to the ground, he never completed the catch, making it an incomplete pass and a turnover on downs instead of a 1st and goal. Sure enough, the Packers would close out the game and win in a 26-21 final. This opened up the controversy in the NFL as to what is a catch. The argument being that if you secure the ball, it would be a completed catch, and if you lose the ball after the fact, then it is a catch and a fumble. But the NFL seems to struggle with identifying catch fumbles with incomplete passes. The rule states that in order to complete a catch, you have to secure control of the ball prior to the ball touching the ground, in bounds, and then perform any act common to the game. Examples are tucking the ball away, extending it forward, taking an additional step, turning upfield, or avoiding or warding off an opponent. A similar play happened a few years later. Down 27-24 with 28 seconds left, Steelers quarterback Ben Roethlisberger threw a pass to Jesse James, who seemingly caught the ball and reached for the goal line in what was initially ruled a touchdown against the Patriots in Week 15. However, for the same confusing reason, extending the arm did not count as completing the catch, and it was ruled incomplete.
Not a catch.
What makes this dumb rule even more frustrating is that later on that same season, in Super Bowl 52, another seemingly similar play happened when Eagles quarterback Nick Foles threw a touchdown pass to Zach Ertz. He was seen losing the ball after the play the same way the two others had, and yet it was still ruled a touchdown, solidifying that the NFL is just making it up as they go. So yeah, Dez's no catch just solidifies how nobody in the NFL knows what a catch is. Fake crowd noise. This is actually a rule in the NFL in which teams are not allowed to pump in their own fake crowd noise. All the noise has to be generated from their own real-life fans, which can be difficult if your team doesn't really have fans. One team has gotten caught using fake crowd noise in order to generate a loud environment: the 2016 Atlanta Falcons. Man, the Falcons can't catch a break, can they? They would be fined $350,000, as well as have their 5th-round draft pick taken away. You may already know that the NFL of course did later allow the use of fake crowd noise during the 2020 season, when attendance was typically only allowed to be 10 to 20%. But yeah, other than that, there's not much else to this one. Just know that to this day, teams are still not allowed to do this. The XFL. The XFL was a spring league meant to rival the NFL that was founded by Vince McMahon, the chairman of the WWE. His aim with this football league was to make it resemble the WWE as much as possible, with a lot of weird and wacky rules. One rule change was that players could actually wear whatever name they wanted to on their jersey. They didn't have to use their actual names. Another weird rule was to decide who gets the ball first. Instead of flipping a coin, two players would race 50 yards in order to obtain a loose ball in which they called a scramble. Whoever gets the ball will receive first.
You know, in the past, all football games get started with a coin toss. No way, Jose.
The XFL also famously ignored many safety regulations compared to the NFL, even allowing a player, who was diagnosed a few days ago with a pretty severe concussion, the ability to play in a game.
Dez Bryant, how in the world are you starting this game tonight after taking that hit just 6 days ago?
Well, let me answer that question by asking you two questions. One, is this or is this not the XFL? Yes, it is. Two, do I or do I not currently have a pulse? Yes, I do. Let's play football.
The inaugural season took place in 2001, and due to a lack of popularity, quickly folded after just that one season. Vince McMahon would attempt to bring the league back in 2020, with a completely new look, new teams, and more standard NFL regulated rules. Their second inaugural season would happen in 2020 before being cut short due to the world health crisis. The league was then sold by Vince McMahon to none other than Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who is now the current commissioner of the league. It was brought back in 2023 and finally finished its inaugural season. And as far as the quality of the league, it's pretty much what you'd expect. It's somewhat entertaining, just not nearly the same level of quality as the NFL.
Do whatever the you want!
The USFL. The USFL is another spring league standing for United States Football League. It initially ran from 1983 to 1986 before folding. No one expected to see a return for this league. However, the owners, after seeing a possible market for spring football with the attempts of the XFL, decided to bring the league back in 2022. They actually just finished their second season of play here in 2023, and if I were to describe the quality, I'd say it's about on the same level as the XFL, maybe even a little less. You're just not going to get NFL quality football in either of these spring leagues. The FedEx Field Curse. FedEx Field is the current stadium that is home to the Washington Commanders. It's also a stadium that is pretty old and falling apart, quite literally. In 2021, Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts was almost crushed by a wall that fell on him from the stands due to fans leaning on it too much. The stadium is known to be cursed for the sheer amount of serious injuries that have happened on this field. I'll list them off very quickly. You got Kyle Allen's leg injury, Chase Young's torn ACL, Ryan Fitzpatrick's hip injury, RG3's torn ACL, Joe Burrow's ACL injury, and most famously, Alex Smith's leg that nearly snapped in half. It's regarded as one of the worst active stadiums in the league right now, and with the sheer amount of serious injuries that have taken place on its field, it's regularly believed to be a cursed place. The Body Bag Game. The Body Bag Game was a nickname given to a Monday Night Football game that was played on November 12, 1990, between the Washington Redskins and the Philadelphia Eagles. It's referred to as the Body Bag Game because before the game, Eagles head coach Buddy Ryan told reporters his team would inflict a beating on Washington so bad that, quote, they'll have to be carted off in body bags. Then, sure enough, during the game, 9 Washington players left with injuries. And an Eagles player even reacted to one of those injured Washington players by yelling, "Do you guys need any more body bags?" You know, I wonder if there was any Bountygate related scandal with this game. By the end of the game, the Redskins were forced to rely on a 4th string quarterback to play for them due to the overwhelming amount of injuries that they had. And the Eagles would of course win the game 28-14, given the amount of injuries inflicted. The Metrodome Collapse. The Metrodome was the home stadium of the Minnesota Vikings from 1982 to 2013. While it was a fairly popular location, with many iconic moments taking place inside, it is probably most famous for the roof of the stadium collapsing. On December 10th, 2010, Minneapolis was hit with a very severe snowstorm, a couple days prior to a Monday Night Football game that they were scheduled to play there. Workers were ordered not to clear the snow off the roof due to the conditions of the roof still being very icy and unsafe. So the snow just built up on the roof for a few days until the day they were scheduled to play the Monday Night Football game. 12 hours before the game was set to play, the weight of the snow finally caused the roof of the stadium to suddenly collapse and snow would pour in onto the field. Footage of the roof collapsing was captured by Fox Sports cameras that were set up for the Monday night game. This would cause a delay for the game until they could find a new location to play. What's scary is how close to the game the incident was. Like, this could have very easily happened during the Monday night game, and who knows what would have happened then. Botched coin flip. This is in reference to a Thanksgiving game that was played on November 26, 1998, between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Detroit Lions. The game would head into overtime with a 16-16 tie, causing an overtime coin toss. During the toss, Steelers running back Jerome Bettis was asked to make the call for his team. Bettis claims to have called tails, however the official for the game, Phil Luckett, claimed that Bettis had said heads and therefore flipped the coin with heads being the call.
Call it plays in the air. Heads is the call. He said heads, it is a tails.
Oh, I believe he said tails. He did.
He would flip the coin, and sure enough, it would be tails, causing the Lions to win the toss and eventually win the game 19-16. Bettis has argued repeatedly that he said tails, but Luckett to this day claims that Bettis started saying heads first and then changed to tails midway. Apparently by rule, you are not allowed to change your mind on a call once you've already started to say it, so Luckett went with Bettis' original response of heads. You can find the clip online and listen for yourself to see what you think he said. It's also just a very fun clip to watch because it's a bunch of grown men passionately arguing about the results of a coin toss. It's pretty good.
Tails? Oh my!
Well, we'll find out.
Max McGee. Max McGee was an American wide receiver who played for the Green Bay Packers from 1954 to 1967. He is most famous for being the first receiver to catch a touchdown pass in the Super Bowl, catching a pass from quarterback Bart Starr to secure a 7-0 lead to start the game. In what was simply referred to at the time as the first ever World Championship game, the Green Bay Packers battled it out against the Kansas City Chiefs. McGee had a career game, and his 7 catches for 138 yards and 2 touchdowns helped lead the Packers to a 35-10 blowout. What most people don't know about Max McGee is that he was severely hungover during the entirety of the game. You see, McGee had a long career with the Packers, and in his final season, his productivity had declined, far enough to the point where he was no longer starting for Green Bay, as he did not expect to even play in the Super Bowl. So, he took the opportunity to party the night before the game. According to accounts from people on the team, McGee snuck out of the team hotel after their 11 p.m. bed check. He would meet up with 2 flight attendants that he had met earlier for drinks. Okay, Max, I see you. He was constantly calling his best friend on the team, Paul Hornung, who claimed that McGee called him throughout the night asking him to come down and have a drink with him and the girls. The last Hornung had heard from him was when McGee called him from the hotel lobby at 6:30 in the morning. Before games, McGee would usually meet up early with the starting wide receiver, Dale Dowler, to discuss the game plan. In this meeting, McGee pleaded with Dowler to not get injured, stating that he had way more to drink than he probably should have. And almost as fate would have it, Dowler would go down and McGee was forced to play. And yet, he put up one of the best statistical performances of his entire career, and even gets to be known forever as the guy who caught the first touchdown pass in the Super Bowl. That's crazy. Super Bowl wardrobe malfunction. This is of course in reference to the Super Bowl 38 halftime show. On February 1st, 2004, Janet Jackson was set to perform the Super Bowl halftime show along with Justin Timberlake. During the show, there appeared to be a wardrobe malfunction near the end of the performance in which Justin Timberlake accidentally removed a part of Janet Jackson's top, exposing her to millions of viewers. They honestly played off pretty decently well, just continuing on with the performance as it was originally intended.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
The Bobby Lane Curse. Bobby Lane was an NFL quarterback that played from 1948 to 1962. While he played for a number of teams, he was most prominently known for playing for the Detroit Lions from 1950 to 1958. In this time period, he would win 3 NFL championships for the Lions, and he was a 6-time Pro Bowler. However, in 1958, the Lions decided to go a different route and trade Bobby Lane to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Lane was so distraught with this news, and some reports stated that he had actually cursed the Lions out to his former teammates, stating that they would not win for another 50 years. Now, that part of the story has been debunked as not actually happening, but some fans like to think a curse on the Lions did take place. After Lane was traded, the Lions would only make the playoffs once in the next 25 years. A once dominant NFL franchise turned into the league's laughingstock. They would also suffer non-stop quarterback controversies and wouldn't find themselves a long-time starter for quite a while. Even to this day, people believe the curse still persists, as the Lions hold the longest drought of no playoff wins in 31 years. So, yeah, it's possible that the Bobby Lane curse is real. The Loveboat. The Loveboat is a scandal involving the Minnesota Vikings. On October 6, 2005, an alleged sex party occurred on Lake Minnetonka with 17 members of the Minnesota Vikings football team. 2 houseboats were rented, and prostitutes from Atlanta and Florida were flown in for the party. Around 90 people combined were there on these houseboats, with most of them being women. Allegedly, a lot of depravity and degeneracy took place on these houseboats, if you catch my drift. This party would even lead to 4 of the players being charged with misdemeanors related to the events. Some point to this being the very key factor to the firing of head coach Mike Tice, who was later replaced by Brad Childress. Childress would lead the team to the 2009 NFC Championship Game, so I guess it all worked out. Well, not for Mike Tice, I guess. Jerry Jones' 1957 photo. This is in reference to a photo that resurfaced from 1957 of a young Jerry Jones, the current owner of the Dallas Cowboys. The photo in question depicts a young Jerry Jones along with many white students blocking a pathway for a group of black students from walking through the cafeteria. The photo comes from North Little Rock High School in Arkansas and was taken in the midst of a group of white students protesting against the end to segregation in the high school. Many point to this photo as proof of Jerry Jones being a long-standing racist. He has of course denounced this photo and his views that he's held in the past, saying that he has learned and changed a lot from 60 years ago, and that he can only try to do better moving forward. Still, it is very shocking to see a photo of Jerry Jones quite literally being on the wrong side of history. Carson Wentz is Prince Harry. Carson Wentz is an NFL quarterback who still currently plays today. While he's not playing football, he serves with the British royal family as King Charles's son under the alias of Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex. No, but seriously, all jokes aside, this pretty much is just a meme in the NFL community, joking about how similarly Carson Wentz looks to Prince Harry. But ask yourself this, have you ever seen the two of them together in the same room before? Russ threw Super Bowl 49. Okay, so hold on tight because there's going to be a lot to explain here. On February 1st, 2015, the Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots squared off in Super Bowl 49. It was a very entertaining back and forth game. At one point in the game, the Patriots came back from a 24-14 deficit to take a 28-24 lead with 2 minutes and 2 seconds left to go in the game. The Seahawks would get the ball back and immediately mount a drive, looking to take the lead back. Led by Seahawks quarterback Russell Wilson and running back Marshawn Lynch, the Seahawks would drive the ball all the way to the Patriots' 1-yard line. After getting to the 1-yard line, the belief was that Seattle would hand the ball off to Lynch for him to punch it in and win the game. Most of the Seahawks offense in that game was thanks to Marshawn Lynch, and it had only made sense to use him in this short yardage situation. To the surprise of everyone, Seattle would throw the ball instead, leading to a Patriots interception in the end zone, sealing the game for the Patriots.
At 5. Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler. Unreal.
And I'm sorry, but I can't believe the call.
Me neither.
I cannot believe the call. You've got Marshawn Lynch in the backfield. You've got a guy that's been borderline unstoppable in this part of the field. I can't believe the call.
The call to pass in that situation instead of running the ball has been considered one of the worst calls in NFL history. And of course, this has led to many fans speculating as to why the call was made. There are some fans who think that Russell Wilson wanted to throw the ball indefinitely in order to be able to throw the game-winning touchdown pass and possibly win MVP honors for the game. Honors that would have no doubt went to Marshawn Lynch had they won the game. Some people think Wilson was jealous of Lynch and wanted to cement himself in NFL greatness by locking up a Super Bowl MVP to his name. You see, the Seahawks had actually won the Super Bowl from the season prior, and Wilson had not won MVP for that game either. So people theorized that Wilson was less interested in winning another Super Bowl, more so than he was earning a Super Bowl MVP. So he made sure that the play was a pass as opposed to a run for Lynch, and it would end in a Seahawks loss.
Like 1 yard. You need 1 yard. Run the ball. Run the ball. Run the ball.
I don't think there's any credibility to this theory, to be honest, but it is still infamously one of the worst calls in NFL history, and we'll probably never know for sure why the Seahawks chose to throw instead of run. It is crazy to think, though, that the Seahawks were quite literally 1 yard away, one play away from becoming an NFL dynasty. Jimmy Hoffa's remains. Jimmy Hoffa was an American labor union leader who served as the president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, or IBT, from 1957 until 1971. Hoffa became involved with organized crime from the early years of his Teamsters work, a connection that continued all throughout his life. He was convicted of jury tampering, attempted bribery, conspiracy, and mail and wire fraud in 1964. He was imprisoned in 1967 and sentenced to 13 years in prison. Hoffa would disappear on July 30th, 1975. It is generally accepted that he was murdered by the Mafia, and in 1982, he was officially declared legally dead. Hoffa's legacy and the circumstances of his disappearance continue to stir debate to this day. So, how does this relate back to football? While it's understood that Hoffa was likely whacked by the mob, the question remains as to what happened to his body, as it was never found. There is an urban legend that his body was buried in the west end zone of Giants Stadium. The rumor was started by a self-described mob hitman who joked that he was buried there in an interview with Playboy magazine. While Hoffa was known to be a Giants fan and attended every game, it is unknown what truly happened to his remains, so the urban legend persists. The rumors were put to rest after the Giants Stadium was demolished in 2010.
Whoa! What the hell?
NFL hid CTE. Chronic traumatic encephalopathy. I probably should have Googled how it's pronounced before I started recording, but we're just going to continue on. Anyway, CTE is a progressive and fatal brain disease associated with repeated traumatic brain injuries, including concussions and repeated blows to the head. Unfortunately, this makes it very likely for NFL players to develop CTE later on in their lives. It is well known that the NFL has tried to downplay the significance of CTE and its link to football. In 2002, an autopsy was performed in Pittsburgh on Steelers Hall of Fame center Mike Webster shortly after he had removed himself from existence. The forensic scientist, Dr. Bennett Omalu, had made alarming discoveries when examining Webster's brain, and he would later go on to write a paper about it in 2005. The NFL had a long history of dismissing the significance of concussions, forming a committee in the early 1990s made just to push disinformation on the topic. The Traumatic Brain Injury Committee, or MTBI, would publish their own research to downplay the severity of concussions. And after Omalu's paper was published, the MTBI pushed to have the paper retracted. Omalu and his co-authors beat the attempt at retraction, and instead, Omalu's second paper would be published, which found CTE in the brain of former Steelers offensive lineman Terry Long. But the NFL continued to attack Omalu's work, saying it's not appropriate science and that his work was purely speculative. This battle would continue up until 2007, when Roger Goodell took over as NFL commissioner. A concussion summit was later held. However, Omalu would not be invited as the NFL continued to try and blackball his studies. After years of fighting, the NFL pretty much had no choice but to accept the research as valid, and the MTBI was later disbanded. A lot of this story is documented very well in the 2015 film Concussion. Chuck Hughes. So I didn't want to cover too much death because I didn't want this iceberg to be sad. So I avoided topics like Sean Taylor. However, this one was particularly interesting, so here we go. Chuck Hughes was an NFL wide receiver who played from 1967 to 1971. He had played for both the Philadelphia Eagles and the Detroit Lions. To this day, he is the only player to have tragically lost their life on the field. The circumstances of his death are very unfortunate. Hughes had suffered an injury in an August 1971 preseason game against the Buffalo Bills, which led him to collapsing in the locker room. He was hospitalized, but doctors were unable to diagnose what was wrong, and suspecting that it was just a spleen injury, he would be released, despite never fully recovering. On October 24th, 1971, the Lions hosted the Chicago Bears at Tiger Stadium. Late in the fourth quarter, Hughes would catch a 32-yard pass in the game and eventually get tackled. 3 plays later, while beginning to walk back to the huddle, Hughes would collapse to the ground and begin to convulse. He was rushed to the hospital and was pronounced dead a few hours later. After examining Hughes, it was revealed that he had been suffering from an undiagnosed and advanced form of arteriosclerosis, which basically means one of his coronary arteries was 75% blocked, and that he had a family history of heart disease as well. It was a very tragic incident that to this day is the only death to have happened on the field. What's crazy to me is that the NFL forced them to finish the game shortly after fans had just witnessed a death happen in real time on the field. That's insane. We've seen many horrifying injuries, but never something like this. And anyway, I hope he rests in peace and I wish his family the best. Hidden PED results. There isn't much to this one. Most people know that pro athletes are taking the legal possible amount of performance-enhancing substances that they can get away with. This is a theory from many fans that because the NFL isn't transparent with their PED results, that there might be some results that they hide intentionally. Some people think certain star players may not pass their PED tests, but the NFL won't go public with it due to the players being a big money revenue for them. They'd want them to play for ratings, as well as avoiding controversy with steroids and shattering the league's popularity. There is no known instances of this. This is mainly just a very deep theory from NFL fans. And finally, we have the script. The script is pretty much referred to mostly as a joke in the NFL community. This theory is that all of the NFL is entirely scripted. Every win, every loss, every storyline, every Super Bowl champion, every MVP, every play is already pre-planned to happen before even the start of the season. Meaning all of the players, coaches, officials are all in on this conspiracy, and nothing in the league happens without it happening according to the script. It's all completely staged with the purposes of emphasizing storylines like the WWE or the Harlem Globetrotters. So yeah, we have all been fooled. Well, there you guys go. That was the whole comprehensive NFL iceberg. I hope you enjoyed going on this journey with me. I certainly had a lot of fun. I really enjoy this format and would like to make more videos like this, so if you enjoyed this video, it would mean a lot to me if you could like it, and if you enjoy this channel, consider subscribing. You won't be disappointed. Well, that's all I have for you now, so I hope to see you again. It has been a pleasure.